the morning of my wedding felt unusually quiet, even with people moving in and out of rooms, adjusting fabrics, asking small questions. It wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes when everyone is trying not to touch something fragile. I had learned to move carefully around my sister, long before that day. She wasn't always loud. That was the part people misunderstood. The outbursts came after long stretches of being indulged, explained, defended, softened by my mother's steady insistence that she just feels things more deeply. Growing up, that explanation became a kind of gravity. Everything bent around it. By the time I was old enough to leave for university, I had stopped correcting it. That morning, I noticed she hadn't said much. No jokes, no pointed comments disguised as concern. Just a tight, restless presence. My mother stayed close to her, like she was monitoring weather. I remember thinking, not for the first time, that I wasn't the one anyone was watching. The ceremony itself passed without interruption. Vows, applause, the blur of faces. It was almost convincing, like we had all agreed, silently, to hold a version of reality together for a few hours. The reception broke that agreement. It started with a sound before it became a scene. The sharp crack of glass hitting the floor, conversations folded in on themselves. I turned just as champagne arced through the air, catching light in a way that would have been beautiful anywhere else. It soaked into the front of my dress. Before I fully understood, the cake went next. Not a dramatic push, not a spectacle. Just a sudden, deliberate collapse under her hands, like she needed to prove it wasn't solid. And then her voice, louder than I had ever heard it. "This is what you get for acting like you're better." There was a pause after that. Not silence. People shifting. Someone dropping a fork, but a pause in meaning. Like everyone was waiting to see which version of the story they were supposed to believe. I didn't say anything. I think some people expected tears. Or anger. Something visible. Something they could respond to. But what I felt wasn't sharp. It was familiar. My mother reached her before anyone else could. "She just needs to let it out," she said. Holding her, smoothing her hair like this, was something passing through. Not something done. No one came to me. A staff member asked quietly if I wanted to step away, and I nodded. Not because I needed space, but because it seemed like the simplest way to move forward without becoming part of the scene. In the hallway, I stood for a moment, looking down at the champagne spreading through the fabric. It would stain. That was obvious. What surprised me was how little urgency I felt to fix it. Inside, I could hear my mother's voice continuing. Low, reassuring, framing what had just happened into something manageable. I stayed out there longer than necessary. Long enough to understand that nothing about that moment was going to be corrected by staying. That night, after everything had thinned out, guests gone, dress folded away, messages piling up on my phone, I sat at the small desk in the hotel room and opened my laptop. There were things I had delayed for months, forms half completed. Accounts I had access to because it was easier that way. Responsibilities that had never been formally mine, just gradually absorbed. My sister's tuition deposit sat under my name. A co-signed lease agreement, still active. Extensions granted because it avoided conflict, because it kept things stable. I moved through each one without rushing. There was no anger in it. No sense of getting even. Just a quiet alignment between what I was responsible for and what I was no longer willing to carry. Click by click, access changed. Payments withdrawn. Notifications triggered. I didn't draft messages to explain. For the first time, I wasn't preparing to be understood. I slept for a few hours, not deeply, but without the usual replay of conversations I wished I had handled differently. At 8:40 a.m., my phone started ringing. I let it ring, then again, and again. When I finally looked, there were messages layered over each other. Confusion first, then urgency, then something closer to accusation. A call came through from an unfamiliar number. I answered that one. It was a woman speaking in the measured tone of someone used to delivering information that doesn't change, based on reaction. She confirmed my identity, then outlined, in precise language, the updates I had initiated. The tuition account was no longer funded. The lease required immediate attention due to a change in guarantor status. No emotion, no negotiation, just structure. I understand, I said. When I hung up, there was a message from my mother waiting. Just one line. What did you do? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I made coffee. Sat by the window. Watched the city move in its usual indifference to what had shifted in my life overnight. When I did call her back, her voice was tight, trying to stay controlled. They're saying there's a problem with the payments, with the lease. You need to fix this. I'm not fixing it, I said. A pause. Not the same kind as yesterday. This one had weight. You can't just. After everything. I didn't just, I said, not raising my voice. I stopped. She started to say something else, then stopped herself. I could hear my sister in the background, her voice sharper now, directed outward instead of inward. For a moment, I thought about explaining. Laying it out in a way that might make sense to them. But I recognized that instinct. I'm not responsible for those things anymore, I said. You'll need to figure out what comes next. There was no resolution in that call. No understanding reached. But something had shifted into place, not loudly. Not in a way anyone would applaud. Just a boundary that didn't move when pressed. When I ended the call, the room felt the same. The city outside kept going. Messages would keep coming. Consequences would unfold in ways I couldn't fully control. But for the first time, I wasn't adjusting myself to absorb them. I finished my coffee, while it was still warm.